Oh man. All right, let's get this started. So I'm just stop laughing. Okay, come on, we got to work through this. Okay, I'm just gonna let you go first because if you don't start it, I don't think we'll ever start. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and start first with the awesome on why you oppose the one child policy.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So I. Can you go first? I think you can go first because I don't know.
Okay, so I'll try to go first, and I'm gonna completely look just at my notes without looking at the camera for right now. Okay, so I won't necessarily say I'm opposed to the well, I'm necessarily for the one child policy. However, I do think there's a lot of pros that go along with it. And honestly, while we're in this whole little current tradition uh and way of life, and when everybody is trying to live green and look at ways to make life go longer, and everybody's worried about giving their kids giving their kids a nice environment to live, there are certain things we have to look at, like overpopulation, non-recyclable, non-reusable resources, and stuff like that. And all of that stuff, the one-child policy does help. So that's my opening. That's a lot shorter than I have, but I'll let you go.
Okay. Sorry for the viewers for that we are just laughing too much on it, but I'm really super excited that I'm debating you because I know that we have been trying this like since more than 2, 3 months now,
Yeah.
and we have been call out besties forever. So
Uh-huh. Exactly. Exactly.
so I'm really excited to see how this goes on. And so talking about one child policy, I think for me, challenging this policy mainly comes with personal examples that I've seen in my community and how the behavior of any children, like who has actually been just one child, how the behavior is very different from maybe two siblings, from anyone like who has two siblings or so. So I think it has a lot of disadvantages, and then it's not just about the idea of like population growth. Actually, no matter that's the case they bring forward to propose a one child policy, I think there are many other factors that actually are hindered, like because of this policy. So I think firstly, I think it just puts a lot of change, a lot of different situation for a child to grow. And then I think I know that a lot of people have like one child, but still I know the situation is normal, like the growing condition. But I think it makes them in a certain way, it makes them like it puts them like in a disadvantage, because the way they grow, like they grow up to be a bit different kind of kid. They just feel like a bit um maybe separated, or not really separated, but like it's not something that's happening actually practically, but it's mentally that goes a lot. So maybe when the parents are outside, like it's not, they do not, maybe they might not have anyone to enjoy with, or they might not um have someone to have a conversation with. So I know the different cases. I was a single child, like it would have been very different for me too. So growing up, because I had my sister, like I knew that anything I had, like from my school or anything, I could have a conversation with her. I could make fun of people with her, like, which I definitely, my parents were not allowed to do me. But just the fact that there is someone like inside the home, there is someone who's actually going through the same environment I'm in, I think makes a lot of difference. And I think makes a lot of it's a lot of like different characteristics in a person itself. So yeah, so I think that's kind of like my case, but I'll definitely to be talking about other factors that is actually also playing a greater role on how this policy is um affecting lives and all.
Okay. So I guess one of the biggest things that I'll talk about. And first, let me start off by saying, so there's ways of mitigating that. Like for example, there's stop. Oh, Shimona, you have to stop. That's why I'm trying not to look at the camera. Okay, so right now, okay, so right now we have you were talking about single kids and their behavior and basically the conditions when they're growing up. And yeah, there's possible ways of mitigating that. As in, children go to school, there's school friends. Children have neighbors, there's neighbors that they can hang with. It's not necessarily that unless the parent couples that they have more than one kid, then one kid is going to be left all alone playing by themselves. However, when you look at some of the other reasons, the other mitigating factors, well, some of the other pros, like for example, uh, I'm trying to, let's see, where should I start? Okay. And I guess I didn't really dive into overpopulation, but that's one of the strongest things to talk about when you're talking about the one child policy. And it's almost like the elephant in the room. So right now you're looking at, yes, we can't necessarily say definitively how many people that the earth can handle. But what you can say is that there's only so much resources. There's only so much food. There's only so much water, and there's only so much energy. And right now, that's being exhausted. And just looking at the rate of just growth on everything. So the stats I have here: 10,000 years ago, there might have been no more than a few million people on the planet. The 1 billion mark was not passed until the early 1800s. The 2 billion mark not until the 1920s. And as it stands right now, the world's population is over 7.3 billion. And according to the United Nations predictions, it's going to, by the year 2050, it's going to reach about 9.7 billion, and by 2100 about 11 billion. And so looking at some of the pros, and like I said, and that's really my thing when I'm talking about the one child policy. Yes, it's it's quite effective to say, to do the emotional side of the argument, which is, one kid all by themselves and stuff like that. But it doesn't make sense to continue to have multiple kids, like some people having 3, 4, and 5 kids, if we're going to reach the point where, yes, they're going to have another sibling to play with, only there's not going to be any food for them to eat. And I think that's probably one of the main things that I look at as a pro when looking at the one child policy, and a reason that I think people should actually start talking about kind of implementing some kind of loose kind of one child policy.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm not looking at the camera, so. Okay. So I'll tell you two. Okay, I'll tell you two major things about what you just said right now. So I think the idea about how what if like there will be more children and then no food to eat or something. I think for all these cases you are mentioning, what the government should actually do is actually maybe teach responsible parenthood, because I think any parent like who is actually willing to like make babies like who they think that they cannot sustain, or who actually they think that they cannot give a proper life to. So I think it just comes on a decision is a parent is actually making. So I think it all comes down to the idea of responsible parenthood, which is not actually enforced by one child policy. So I think for this solution, that for the problem we are mentioning, I think the government should actually teach responsible parenthood to people, like how they should be using maybe safety measures for or maybe they should actually be conscious of what they have in terms of like materialistic things or in terms of assets, so that they can maybe fund, or so that they can look after only a certain amount of kids. So I think this is something that the country should focus on if in case they really need a solution to it. And secondly, talking about the population control thing. So just that I think just that the statistics actually show that this policy, let's just take an example of China. This policy is not applied to every area of China. It just applied to the urban areas of China, and it's not applied to the rural areas of China, in which actually there are more chances of maybe like two or more pregnancy. And then what it actually does is that if in case there's maybe a girl child in a family in a rural area, they are actually allowed to have more children until they have a boy child. So that's so I think the idea of population control, like, the gap between these two areas is very, very conflicting. And then I think it's kind of like contradictory if we see it, that if in case this is happening in one part and then not the other part, where there are more chances or more likelihood of actually more children to be produced. So I think the idea of population control is it's kind of rough here if you say it. I'll just pass on the mic to you.
All right. Okay. So you are absolutely correct. So looking at and I pulled some of the stats from the one child thing. So my two major things when I said the reason why I'm not opposed to the one child policy is because it kind of solves two things. One is overpopulation, and the other one is, say, uh ensuring the resources of the planet and basically bringing down population, because there's the amount of waste that the population uses is also detrimental to life. And so yes, in going with China's one child policy, yes, there are certain circumstances where where a family is allowed to have more than one child. uh so wealthy parents, they are allowed to pay more in order to have more children, which does bring more money, because that's not that the government needs more money, but that is bringing in more revenue. If a couple has a severely handicapped child, they are also allowed to have one more. They are allowed to have one more baby. And okay, so I'm just going to have to read this. Couples who comply, and there's also incentives for people to imply. Like, I'm not saying that the federal government needs to put a big law and says that in the United States you're only allowed to have one more, because I actually did like some of the incentives that China had going along with their one child policy, which is okay. So if your family sticks to the one child policy, you get a certificate stating that you only have one child, and this gives them other benefits like interest-free loans and subsidies for education and housing, longer maternity leave, and these things are beneficial to the family. Uh, Also, it does help with overcrowding. Jobs jobs that were becoming very sparse, as far as having more and more and more people, and the amount of food and resources needed to house and feed everybody. And many were living in extreme poverty conditions. And this going to the one child policy that China did, uh, it brought their average from 5.8 children per house to only 1.7 children per house. That average right there, and that the poverty rate in China dropped severely, all because of them implementing the one child policy system, law, policy, one of those. So I'll pass it back to you.
Okay. Do you know that China ended this policy?
Yes, I do. Okay, for anybody who's watching, just know the reason why we're laughing so much is because yes, this is my call out bestie right there. So we're persevering, we're fighting through this. We're going to finish this debate.
Oh my god. I didn't know that this could ever be a challenge, like to finish a debate. I mean, we still have 30 minutes left.
Wow. Okay, but I still have more facts. But go ahead. So the last thing I brought up was that I guess you could say some of the benefits that came along with the one child policy that China did
Mm-hmm,
have
mm-hmm.
when they implemented it.
So I think the one thing that when I talked about how why China actually ended the policy is because like a lot of people like felt that it was like it was suppressing for people. And then like as soon as this policy actually was taken out, a lot of people actually decided to have two children. Like, it was like just I mean, in fact, there's actually a report from a hospital, which I do not have right now, but that's what I actually looked into yesterday, that the very month when that actually was, the policy was canceled, then like the next month, there were a lot of women there, like, for the second child and all. So like, the fact that doing that was actually suppressing someone's desire to have a second baby. I think it is also about autonomy that you are actually creating problems on, because I think it's definitely a parent's decision to actually have maybe one or two children. But as I said, responsible parenthood is something that should be instilled in people, like, but so responsible parenthood is something that should be actually taught in um, yeah, certain people. In fact, like if you see the major cause of population is because there's a lot of unprotected sex and there's a lot of teenage pregnancies, and these are also one of the things beside the culture, which actually like maybe culture like from Asian parts where you need a boy is kind of like the culture there. So you see like unprotected sex, teenage pregnancy, all of these kind of things are also a major reason of overpopulation now. So if in case a responsible parenthood is actually taught to this kind of people, then I think that that will help it more, because people will be responsible. People will be thinking of the decisions they are making. But instead of that, just forcing one child policy is something that's unacceptable because, as I said, people. The result itself shows that, as I said, there was an increment in the people going to hospital. That means that people were suppressed of this desire of having a second child, and then so I think this puts a big question mark on the people's autonomy, which should not be hindered by the government. That's what I propose. But yep. And so in terms of do you know about imaginary friends? Do you know that?
Yes, yes. I
Seriously.
am I am now, unlike you, I wasn't blessed to be born with an awesome twin who could be talking behind me right now during a debate, but I am my only child.
Did
So
you
yeah,
have any
so
imaginary friends?
I did. I had lots of imaginary friends when I was growing up.
Oh, that's great. But yeah, so I don't want to say this, but still, like, I think the psychological impact that it creates is a bit difficult, like a bit different. And I think, as you said, like, people definitely do have friends when they go to school, when they go to class, like they do have friends. But when they come back, like, so family is I think the most integral part. And then now, given that now, like, people are so much, I mean, both men and women are working, like, in every country for now, like, not really every country, but still, like, all parts, like, both are working. And then there's a lot of times a children is actually exposed to maybe what we mean to say is that maybe a children is not exposed to actually exposed with their parents a lot this time. So I think there was actually a debate on whether or not teacher or parents should be more responsible for students' behavior, like, because there was a question mark on today, maybe children not being able to stay with their parents so much because both are at work, and then they come back and they're tired, they go to sleep. But definitely there are, like, sometimes, like, weekend maybe they have fun and all, but still, like, there's always a questioning on this too. So I think the children definitely does have a certain level of impact, because it's the person do not, like, have access to anyone else, like, right at the moment he wants it to be, like, maybe if in case he wants to play a game or something, like, his parents would definitely not want at all time, like, but to have a companion, no matter yeah, so to have a companion, I think, is a great thing. And then the learning actually comes more from the family, because what you see, what you see your parents doing, how you see they act, like, I think there's a lot to take from them as well. So if in case you have a family environment where you can have a companion, where you can actually have someone grow with you. I think that makes a lot of difference. That makes a lot of sharing between those two people. That creates a lot of comfort in the person. Like, for going out and being exposed to the entire world. I think that kind of like prepares, in a way, because definitely there will be different personalities, there will be different dealings. Like even my sister and me, like, we fight a lot. We fight a lot. And so what happened was that in one of the debates, he's actually playing a song, and then it was actually featured in the debate itself. So I was mad at her. She just does some silly things sometimes, like, but I know that she has a different side of personality. And then now I know, if in case I'm ever exposed to such kind of personality in my life, I know how to deal with it. And then so I think it makes a lot of difference, like, and especially when a child becomes a teenager. I think at that time, when the person actually hits puberty, I think there's a lot of factors that, given that our society is like kind of conservative, like sometimes, most of the time. So I think it pushes you, or pushes yourself from actually being able to express yourself to your families, the changes you'll be facing and all. So I think if in case you have a companion, like, because you either see the person go through the same change, or you can actually guide the person to go through the same change. Or I think there's a lot of, one-on-one sharing that actually can go through two people, or maybe, three people as well. So I think it just creates a lot of difference, and even psychologically. And I think it strengthens um, a person, mentally as well. But I definitely say that there are exceptions, but still.
Okay, so I'll take it from you because I was letting you get everything out of your system just now. Okay, so uh, so a lot of the things that you were just saying were all coming from the psychological aspect of the debate topic, and I think a lot of that comes from your personal experience because a lot of that comes from you having a twin. So by you having a twin, somebody that's right there with you, I understand how you would talk about having that partnership and somebody to hang with and somebody to talk to and somebody to go through changes in life with. However, like when you look at my kids, my kids, the first two are have like a 5 year age gap right there. They are still, I go so far as to say is they're almost just as single and alone as somebody who's an only child, and that's because like for those first for the eldest, for his first 4 or 5 years, he was all alone. Then after that, the next one after him was a girl. So a boy's not going to hang with the girl and stuff like that. So he's still alone to hang by himself and play by himself. And then the daughter comes next and she wants to play with Barbie dolls and all kind of female stuff. And the son doesn't want to play with that. So there's still kind of that whole alone thing, even though we have more than one kid. But like I said, it's I think it's a different aspect for you because you were born with a twin and your twin is a female. So bam, natural partnership from birth all the way up through life. And that's a lot of us are not that fortunate. But there's like I said, there's some negative stuff. And like I said, you brought up the psychological aspect of that, which is kind of being alone and stuff like that. But you also spoke about responsible parenting and stuff like that. But responsible parenting also can be taken into that same thing, as in, okay, if you know you have one kid and that one kid doesn't have a sibling, then that means you need to spend more time playing with that one kid. You need to make sure that you take that one kid to the park when you're not at work, because, like I said, there's the environmental aspect, which gives some pros to the one child policy. There's some environmental pros that go to the one child policy, and there's also, and I'm going to go extreme right on this one and go extreme conservative on this one. Uh, when you look at some, let's talk about, oh god, let's look at like the welfare system and stuff like that. Okay, if you were to take away, let's just say we had a magic wand and everybody who's on welfare or something like that and had two, three, four, let's just say the average stops at four, two, three, or four kids, and was able to drop all that down to just having one kid and just a one kid policy and stuff like that. because yes, the one kid policy that China had were mostly in like the poor urban areas and stuff like that. If in our poor urban areas, if it was say there was a restriction to only have one child, then that would mean that's the government spending a lot less money than they have to spend right now, and that's a lot less trash that's going there. And to add on to that, my last stat that I have, and everything after this, where we at 19 minutes left. Okay, so the one child policy in China, it was primarily implemented. I think it said for economic and education reasons, but there was so many more. And like I said, when I think about the skyline in like your cities like Los Angeles and stuff like that, where you can hardly see the sky because there's so much uh, smog and dirt in the air and stuff like that. And according to a scientist in China, that the population control brought sulfur dioxide emissions down by about 17.6%, and the main source of water pollution down by 30.8%. And uh, it prevented between 137 million and 200 million tons of carbon dioxide from entering into the atmosphere. So I'm only saying this, okay? I'm only saying this. There are, I feel like the cons you brought up about the one child policy is mostly just psychological. Yes, but that can be mitigated by parent like an adjustment to parenting, as in I only have one kid. Like my mom, I had I had no siblings, but I'm trying not to make myself sound like a sad kid, because I wasn't a sad kid. Okay, true enough. I didn't have any siblings, but I had cousins to play with. Well, I had a cousin to play with because I was the only child and my cousin was the only child. Well, for I guess he didn't get another sibling till like 10 years later. So it doesn't even count. But I don't believe that there's a significant emotional like negative how I was raised compared to how a person was raised that had siblings. I don't think there's any real evidence of that. Now, I can say, would it have been better if I would have had, say, a brother that was a year older than me or a year younger than me that was cool that I could have like played football with? Yes, yes, but that's a lot of speculation. I could do all kind of what ifs. It would have been nice if my parents had a lot more money too and was able to buy me whatever I wanted. So there's a lot of things that could have possibly made my childhood better, but my childhood wasn't bad for that. But like I said, when looking at some of the pros for a one child policy, there's not many. While I guess the cons is like one, which is a psychological, which could be changed. And but I could be completely wrong, and maybe I just took maybe I just took sad notes, because that is quite also possible. But
Okay.
okay, but let me say this: I am not.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily have a way to say implement a one child policy. I am, and in no way am I saying the federal government should uh make some kind of huge mandate and make it a law that you're allowed to have one child. What I'm saying is there's incentives, and I went over some of the incentives uh that the one child policy in China had. And that's how I would say implement it, not making it a law, but making it by passing incentives for those who abide by only having one child. Because if we do that, that will have some positive outcome to society.
Okay. I have a few things to say in that part. Oh my gosh, what was I talking about? Okay, the first thing is that there are high chances of sex selective abortion if in case it's we do have the one child policy, because um definitely there are families like who have preferences of maybe having a boy or a girl. I know that people actually plan it like through teenagers as well. I have my friends like who know that, I mean, who actually have a preference right now, either they want a boy or a girl. So if in case there's like one child policy, the problem is that because they know that they are not allowed to have a second child, so they'll definitely try to have the most desirable one, maybe if it's a boy or a girl. So if in case it's a boy, they could abort it. And if in case it's, just depending on the preferences. So I think one main problem is that abortion, the sex selective abortion, which is actually discriminatory, is could be occurring. And then secondly, because so what if, just let's just imagine, what if like people are actually wanting a baby boy, but turns out like they're having a girl, and then like they abort it, maybe for the second time, third time, like, just giving an instance. So how the health of maybe a woman would be affected by this as well. So I think there's like this kind of areas that are very critical in terms of one child policy.
I'm about to
And
stand up right quick. Keep going. Don't stop. I can still hear you. Hold on.
yeah, so and in fact, not just the health of a woman, not just the health of a mother, but even the health of the individual children would actually a child would be actually affected if in case selective abortion actually takes in place. And as I said, it's discriminatory as well, and that's two problems that comes with this. And secondly, as you told, that there are a lot of incentives that actually comes up with applying one child policy. But who is actually needing incentives? Rural areas, rural people in such kind of areas who do not have access to more infrastructures, like more development. But we're not doing that, as I told you before. Like this is not implemented in the rural areas of China. This is just implemented in the urban areas of China. So the fact about incentives is, I mean, urban areas, like, people are having a good life, and I think that's people are earning good. That's why they're being able to live there. Maybe there are definitely some exceptions, but still, for the most of the cases. So I think the incentives or whatever you're proposing is actually the rural areas is actually needing that, if in case you see it. So um talking about the same policy. So I think the policy is in itself, like, contradictory and then discriminatory, because, as I said, if in case it's in a rural area, and then if in case you have the first child a girl, and then you want a boy, you are allowed to have, like, more child. So the policy itself is very discriminatory, and then that's something I'm against. Okay. And so was your first child, what was the gap between the first and second child of yours?
5 years.
Okay, 5 years. So they don't get along, or how does it work?
It is.
Oh my god.
It is. It is horrible. Okay, so, uh, oh man, I just forgot how many kids I had. Okay, okay,
You
all
have
right.
three, I know.
Okay, so I have more than three, but that's a whole nother conversation. But okay, so living with me right now, I have three, and so in this whole thing right now, I'm using the three that live with me right now, and there's a boy, then a
Hmm.
girl, and then another girl, and there's a
Okay.
5 year gap almost. Man, I'm old. Yeah, there's like a 5 year gap between each
Mhm.
one. So it goes boy, girl, girl, and the oldest in the middle,
Mhm.
it was horrible because of it was, hey, go take your sister to go play with you and stuff like that. You're like, no, I don't want to take my sister. But then we had another girl at the very end with another 5 year age gap, and it was almost the same thing as far as take your little sister with you. No, I don't want to take my little sister with me. Like I said, that's some of the things you didn't have to deal with because the age distance, the distance between you and your sister is like what, an hour, a minute? How long?
12 minutes.
12 minutes.
Uh-huh.
So that's
But I have something to say on that point.
okay.
Okay, so this factor actually comes into play not necessarily now, but is they grow up. I think because for now, our children are not caring, like, they don't really care about what people think of them. Like, they're not super concerned about what personality they are presenting to the world, what they are being, they're actually being to the society. So they just like, they enjoy, they learn, they fight, they do things, but it's definitely not something that's done with a conscious motive, or just for the idea of presenting an image to the world, to the society, to the family. So for now, if they are not getting along, if they are like, that way, I think it does not necessarily like, matter a lot. But as they grow up, and then as they actually get through a lot of changes in their lives, as they actually go through a lot of transitions, and then as they are conscious about the self image, as they are like exposed to more people, and then like, so now that's when like they will be actually, looking for all of these things. So for now, it's definitely fine. For now, I think it just because children are like, they don't care about so many things consciously. They don't mind, so for now, I think it's a different case. And then all this actually comes into play as it goes by and all. So yep.
Okay. All right. So, uh, the last thing you brought up was the selective abortion, and basically the high abortion rate. And
Mhm.
I don't have a turn for that. And that's because that is, yep, that is something that was linked to the one child policy. And I, yes, I don't really have like a mitigating factor in order to drive that number back down. Uh, I'm not. I'm To say I'm not a fan of abortion would be an understatement. Uh, I don't know how to fix that. Like, as far as me speaking on the side of a one child policy, that's probably the biggest thing that stands in the way of me actually saying, oh, we have to have a one child policy. Yes, this is the way we must go, and stuff like that. That's one of the things that I wish I had a fix for that in this debate, but I really don't. But I'll say this right now, man, the abortion industry seems to be going quite fine right now, all without the one child policy. Uh, Unfortunately, but not so much in the rural areas, like in your Kansas and your Colorado and your Nebraska and stuff like that. And I guess it would say that it may seem discriminatory if you say only in the urban areas, like your big cities, if we was to impose it there. But as far as living conditions, this is this is just a hypothetical I'll throw out there. As far as the fiscal responsibility of the government, the burden that the government has right now in your urban areas, and the amount of pollution in your urban areas, and your crime rate in urban areas, and just the overall living situation in urban areas, uh, with the benefits that China saw when implementing the one child policy, those those same things, it would be, I'll just say it wouldn't be a bad thing to see those same kinds of results in our urban areas. And like I said, like, so many people are trying to look at, all right, you know what, I'm going to get this Brita filter on my sink, and I want to have clean water, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure I recycle this. I'm going to buy this car with this eco-friendly this, and now I'm going to use this other stuff right here. I'm going to use recycled paper instead of regular paper. And it's all these things and all these people that they're trying to do, and they're trying to find new ways to make to just stretch out life on earth. But one of the things that they're not looking at is just the amount of, like, I went over the birth rate and stuff like that, just at the way that our population is just doubling and tripling and stuff like that. And so just when looking at population, it's we can talk about other stuff and other fixes and other things we're doing to make life go longer and how we're trying to take care of Mother Earth. But the overpopulation and the way our population is doubling and tripling is necessary, is something completely positively necessary of as a conversation that we need to have. And I think I'm out.
Okay. Hey, I was going to say about something. I just forgot it. Okay. So okay. In terms of like how you said in urban areas, like there's more pollution, like more crimes and everything. So like that would be a good kind of like solution or that. So I think so so let's just like take an example of crimes. I don't necessarily think that having more people would necessarily in a family would necessarily be a reason of that reason of you know increasing crimes and all, because if in case they have one child but he turns out to be a master planner, then then crimes are going to happen anyway. So even here comes the idea of responsible parenthood. If in case parents are teaching the children proper morals, proper behaviors, then this is definitely something that's going to work out. So secondly, I think when, as I said, we talked about the sex selective abortion, then I think because if in case someone is not following the one child policy in China, someone was not following it, so they were actually exposed to maybe punishment, like in the jails or some kind of like harassment and everything. So it's a forceful so like it is actually seen as a forceful thing. So if in case it is so strictly regulated, let's just see as an example. So the selective abortion would actually be even more risky because um if in case like you might not be able to go to maybe like any national hospitals or anywhere, like because if in case any public hospitals or anything, because they do definitely have a direct association with the government, and then you might have to like go through illegal abortion or something, which actually will have a more disadvantageous like impact on the health of both children and child and mother as well. So I think and in fact, if in case the main problem is that this is something that should not be forced. If in case like I have like seen families who actually have one child, so if in case it's by their will, if in case they're deciding that I cannot give more time to my children, so I think I should just have one children. Like one children would be good for me, and I think that's how maybe our finances or maybe our assets would actually be able to handle. Then they are fine with that. Like it's something that should actually be kept open. So if in case there are families who want to have two children, they think that okay, it's fine. Like we can handle it, we can give proper time to it, and then I think it just should be it just should be a decision. But in our case it was different. Like we were supposed to be one, but we came out as two. So so yeah, so it's just something that should not be actually forceful, but instead like we should have the idea of responsible parenthood, so that we have solutions to um maybe even in fact like decrement in the population itself, because responsible parenthood, unprotected sex and everything so so I think this is the best solution. But imposing one child policy, and then which is actually against a lot of people's desires, because the increment in the hospitals itself, like of mothers for a second child, is actually, the statistics actually tells us that there were like suppressed desires of families, like wanting to have two child and all. So yeah, and I think in terms of like some religious aspects as well, some I don't really have anyone to state right now, but I definitely know that there are some religious aspects, like in terms of this as well. Suppose in Nepal, like we have a festival like that is actually for brothers and sisters, like or maybe like two people. So if in case, I mean, it's not a good point, but still, so I don't know. I just brought it up. That's a silly point, I know. Having a baby just for a festival would definitely be very foolish, but no, let's not talk about it. I was just getting off the point. Yeah, so just the idea of and all. But yeah, I'm so glad. I don't know how the audience is going to react because they're just laughing all the
Yeah, I
time.
know, I know. That's probably, but I do think we covered a lot of stuff. But I'll text you a question. But I think, yeah, I think we covered a lot of everything. It was a pleasure. Thank you once again.
Thank you.